Stop leeching off me, you parasite. For over 20 years, I believed I had devoted myself to David. Yet, this is what he thought of me. I wasn't leeching off him. I was just serving him. Despite thinking this, I can't put it into words. As I feel my strength draining away, David continues. Tom is already working, so there's no reason for you to leech off me anymore, right? But shut up. I don't want to hear your excuses. David raises his voice. Oh no, it's no use. My feelings will never reach him. At that moment, I heard a snap inside me. It's the sound of the thread of love that connects our hearts. At the same time, my feelings for David began to fade. We were husband and wife just a moment ago, but now we are like strangers. David was using me from the start. He never loved me. If he did, he wouldn't blatantly cheat and try to kick me out. I don't care what happens to such a man. No, I have to completely defeat him. Resolved, I lift my face and gaze intently at David. My name is Emily. I am a 50-year-old housewife, married to my husband David for 25 years. Our son Tom, born a few years after our marriage, graduated from university and got a job this year. Now that I've finished raising my child, I can finally do what I want to do. That's what I'm thinking right now. But there's one problem, my relationship with David. David is not a good husband or father. It's hard to find anything good about him. He cheats and doesn't even give me enough for household expenses. Please, can't you at least contribute properly to the household expenses? Huh? Don't talk back to me when I'm the one supporting you. David always snaps back like this. Maybe it's hopeless. Perhaps divorce is the only option. Lately, I've been thinking about this more often. But it's not easy to just bring up divorce. The reason is that my father-in-law, who is ill and in the hospital, has entrusted me with David. I owe a lot to my father-in-law, so I guess I have to endure it as long as I can. I can't easily disregard my father-in-law's words. But my desire to divorce is strong. With these conflicting feelings, I reminisce about the happy times before marriage. The opportunity for that happiness came from a misfortune that befell my father. My family runs a small diner. My father was in charge of cooking and my mother of service. Of course, the food was delicious. However, my father was bad at business. He wanted to feed customers delicious food to their heart's content. That's why he started the diner. It's a noble thought, but that's all he focused on. He hardly considered profitability. It didn't matter if profits were low. As long as customers were satisfied with the delicious food, that was enough for him. Such was his way of doing business. Naturally, it could have been more profitable. As a result, our family finances were always in dire straits. Even as a child, I was proud to see customers leave satisfied. So, I never interfered with my father's business. However, when I was in college, an incident occurred. The company supplying ingredients to my father's diner went bankrupt due to the recession. I've already paid this month's bill. If this continues, we'll have to close our shop. Our business was already barely managing. There was no extra money to spare. Seeing my parents so dejected made me anxious too. But as a college student, there was nothing I could do. I couldn't expect the bankrupt company to refund us. The only option left was to close the diner. That's when a regular customer at the diner, who turned out to be my future father-in-law, said this. Close the shop? It's so delicious though. That would be a waste. But with the supplier's bankruptcy, we'll end up in debt too. Then let me help you out personally. Use it to get your shop back on its feet. The regular customer, indeed, lent my father the money on the spot. Thank you so much. We will repay you. Take your time with the money. Just keep making delicious food." He left quickly after saying that. Later, my father started dealing with another food wholesaler, which was a large company and offered cheaper prices. Fortunately, our family diner was saved from bankruptcy. About a year later, I went with my father to repay the money to the regular customer. While my father and the man were talking, a young man approached me. "I heard you borrowed money from my father." It turned out he was the son of the man who lent us the money. His name was David, and he worked in his father's company. "You're pretty. Would you like to go out with me sometime?" "Eh? With you? Why not?" Think of it as a way to thank me for the money. We were indeed saved because they lent us money. But my father has already properly thanked them. I don't owe them this much. As I thought this, David whispered in my ear. "The daughter of a diner owner ungrateful." I could spread that around, you know. That's not. I couldn't argue back. Even if he spread rumors, it wouldn't hurt me personally. But it might trouble my father. And what would the customers think? These thoughts made me unable to refuse David's invitation. I didn't like it, but I decided to endure it just this once. Despite my reluctance, when I went out with David, it was more fun than I expected. David was interesting, knew various places to go, and had great taste in choosing restaurants. My first impression of him was terrible, but he might be a good person. That was my unlucky thought. I was easily swayed by David. "It's fun being with you, Emily." "I'm having fun too." "You're such a good and honest girl, Emily." I've never thought about marrying anyone until now. Swayed by such simple words, I started dating David with marriage in mind. He continued to persuade me in various ways. Eventually, a few years later, I found myself married to David. Of course, I never imagined at the beginning that this was all David's trap. He seemed genuinely kind, and I felt loved by him. But it was all a lie. As soon as we got married, David showed his true colors. "Here's this month's salary. Manage it well." I opened the envelope given to me by David. Inside was a salary statement. The salary itself was deposited directly into a bank, so just having a statement wasn't unusual. However, one thing struck me as odd: the salary statement was handwritten. Handwritten statements are almost unheard of nowadays. But I got married 25 years ago, a time when computers were just beginning to spread among the general populace, and handwritten statements didn't seem out of place. It's over 1,000, so it's reasonable, I guess. I muttered to myself, trying to convince myself. I managed the household with that little money. As my married life continued, I gradually began to feel something was off. It was David's daily routine. David left the house at a fixed time every morning, but his return was erratic, varying from day to day. I'm busy with various tasks as the successor to my father's business. "Then, could you call before coming home? You're so annoying." "Fine. I'll call." David raised his voice. His attitude made me feel even more uneasy. I wondered if he was out playing around or even had an affair. Such thoughts crossed my mind, but I couldn't confront him because I was scared of his yelling. Ultimately, I remained silent, harboring doubts about David's behavior. Then Tom was born. I thought having a child might change things a bit. But David's attitude remained the same. Looking back, it was around that time I started to consider divorce vaguely. It was when Tom was in middle school that I received a phone call from my mother while out shopping for dinner. "What? Dad's been hospitalized." It was a call informing me that my father had been hospitalized. I rushed to the hospital in a panic. "Your mother just made a big fuss over the phone. It's nothing serious." He said this with a hearty laugh. I was relieved. But at that moment, I remembered something that made my heart skip a beat. Oh no. I forgot to contact David. By the time I realized it, it was too late. My cell phone was flooded with missed calls from David. In a panic, I called him back, only to be greeted by his grumpy voice. "Where are you and what are you doing? Get back here and make me dinner." "I'm sorry." "My father." "Huh? Your father? Your old man?" David asked with a slightly raised voice. I answered in a small voice. "Yes. He was suddenly hospitalized. Your father has nothing to do with this. You're my wife." I flinched and closed my eyes at David's loud voice. I was terrified of him yelling. But I knew I had to stand up for myself this time. I steeled myself to talk back. "Is it wrong to be worried about my father? That should be allowed, right? Shut up. Don't talk back to me. No, let me speak. If it were your father, you would rush to him, wouldn't you?" When I asked, David suddenly fell silent. Putting himself in my shoes should have made an impact. That's what I thought, but David's response was beyond my imagination. "Huh? If my father were hospitalized, I'd ignore it. After all, it doesn't matter to me if he's around or not." I was speechless. This had to be a lie. Despite thinking this, I couldn't deny it. After much hesitation, I said to David, "I'm different from you. Sorry, but eat out today." That was all I could muster to say. I hung up the phone in a daze. Since that incident, I truly couldn't believe in David anymore. That's when I finally realized that the happy times before marriage were all an illusion. Ah, I see. David didn't want a wife, he wanted a housekeeper. Saying it out loud made me sad. But I couldn't just keep feeling sorry for myself. That's right. If I'm going to divorce, I need to start preparing. I began preparing for a divorce. Then, a few years later, my father-in-law was hospitalized. His condition was quite serious. He might not be able to leave the hospital. Oh. I relayed the medical condition I heard from the doctor to David. However, David remained unfazed. "So, it's going to cost money, huh? Is money all you're worried about? Do you understand the situation?" "I understand. I'll contact my brother." David contacted his brother-in-law. The brother-in-law was married but had no children. David asked if he could bear the hospital expenses. "Can you pay for it? We have Tom and Emily, so it's tough for us." His words sounded as if it was someone else's problem. It reminded me of the time when my father was hospitalized. It seemed David didn't care about his father-in-law. I couldn't bear it anymore. "Enough. I'll manage somehow and pay for your father's hospital expenses. Don't forget what you just said," David shouted. I nodded firmly. Eventually, my declaration led to us bearing the cost of the father-in-law's hospital fees. Moreover, due to his illness, my father-in-law stepped down as the president of the company, and David took over. Regardless, David didn't seem to like that I had taken the initiative. Since then, he blatantly started staying away from home. This was even the case when discussing Tom's plans. David ignored my calls and didn't return home. "Dad's not coming home again today." "I'm sorry, Tom. I've caused you trouble." "It's fine, I don't care about Dad. Anyway, I want to go to a university in Tokyo." "Right. Don't worry about the tuition, I'll find a way to manage it." Soon, Tom's admission to a university in LA was confirmed. Naturally, David didn't see him off. Once Tom moved to LA, the house felt incredibly empty. By that time, David was only coming home about once a week. With the father-in-law's hospital fees, could you transfer a bit more money? Huh? I already transferred more than half of my salary. It should be enough for you alone. The amount David transferred was just a little. It was only a fraction of his salary. His claim of transferring more than half was a lie. I knew that. But I didn't have the energy to complain. After a few years, I learned that Tom had found a job. Now that Tom has a job, maybe it's time to discuss divorce. Over these years, I've prepared everything for the divorce. All that's left is the timing. When and where should I say it to avoid causing a scene? These thoughts constantly crossed my mind. It's not even about avoiding conflict, is it? I laughed self-deprecatingly. Then, on a certain day, I went to visit my father-in-law in the hospital. After a usual chat with him, I returned home. As I was about to open the front door, I realized something startling. For some reason, the door was unlocked. Could it be a burglar? I timidly peeked inside. To my surprise, I heard the sound of the TV and David's laughter from the living room. Relieved that David was home, I entered the living room. There, David was watching TV and laughing heartily. "You're home." "Yeah, I thought I'd tidy up the house a bit." "Tidy up?" Looking around the room as David suggested, I noticed something was off. Several items were missing. "Wait, it seems like something's missing." "Yeah, I threw them out." "Your stuff?" "Threw out?" "My things?" Shocked, I hurried to my room. The room was empty. My computer, TV, my favorite cup, even the bed was gone. Everything was missing. What is the meaning of this? They were no longer needed, so I threw them out. Not needed? What am I supposed to do now? As I raised my voice, David frowned. He then averted his gaze and sighed. How should I put it? I'm tired of supporting you? What do you mean by that? I am your wife. As I retorted, David became visibly annoyed and suddenly raised his voice. Do I have to spell it out for you? Stop leeching off me, you parasite. For over 20 years, I believed I had devoted myself to David. Yet, this is what he thought of me. I wasn't leeching off him. I was just serving him. Despite thinking this, I can't put it into words. As I feel my strength draining away, David continues. Tom is already working, so there's no reason for you to leech off me anymore, right? But, shut up. I don't want to hear your excuses. David raises his voice. Oh no, it's no use. My feelings will never reach him. At that moment, I heard a snap inside me. It's the sound of the thread of love that connects our hearts. At the same time, my feelings for David began to fade. We were husband and wife just a moment ago, but now we are like strangers. David was using me from the start. He never loved me. If he did, he wouldn't blatantly cheat and try to kick me out. I don't care what happens to such a man. No, I have to completely defeat him. Resolved, I lift my face and gaze intently at David. What? Got something to say? Nothing at all. If you want me to leave, I'll just do as you say and leave. I slammed the living room door with force and headed towards my room. But there was nothing of mine left. Not even a single piece of clothing. You won't find anything. I had it all taken away by the garbage collectors. Which company was it? There's a flyer right there. That one. I picked up the flyer of the company lying on the floor. While dialing their number, I told David, I'll make sure you regret this. With those parting words, I immediately left the house. The call connected shortly. After explaining the situation, they understood immediately. It seems they felt something was off with David's actions and had kept everything collected as is. I'll be there right away. Thank you so much. I expressed my gratitude and hung up. Then, I went to the collector's place. After thanking them, I had my belongings moved into a newly rented storage unit. Relieved to know my belongings were safe, I clenched my teeth in anger. I called Tom and briefly explained the situation before concluding with, "So, I've decided to move out based on the assumption of a divorce. Tom, you should be prepared for that too. Is that okay?" Okay, I got it. Bye." Tom hastily ended the call. He seemed scared of me. Was I that angry? I put my phone in my bag, puzzled, and headed to a nearby business hotel. I had already decided on a place to move to. The reason was simple. I had planned to talk to David about divorce soon. I planned to move there after the divorce and start a new life. Well, things just happened a bit earlier than planned. Honestly, I wasn't really troubled. It was just a matter of my plans being accelerated by a couple of weeks. 2 weeks in a hotel. Such a waste. I can't help thinking that way. It's a housewife's habit to feel things are wasteful. Should I charge him for this hotel stay? Well, whatever it is, be prepared, David. Muttering to myself, I started working on my post-divorce plans that I had thought out in advance. About 10 days after starting my life in the business hotel, David called me during lunch. As soon as I answered, David raised his voice. You stole my money." "Huh? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. The hospital just called, saying they need payment for Dad's hospitalization." Realizing what he was referring to, I sighed and responded, "You should pay it. I'm no longer involved, having been kicked out by you. I've been transferring living expenses to you. You're supposed to pay it from there." "Yes, but isn't the bank book for that account with you now?" I retorted calmly. I knew there was no money in that account, which is why I couldn't stop grinning. "I have the bank book, but there's no money in it." "That's why I'm saying you stole it." "I haven't stolen anything. Don't lie. Who else could use it? Doesn't he realize the amount he transferred was too little?" I replied with exasperation. There was little money from the beginning. "If there's no money for the hospital bill, why don't you use your allowance?" "My allowance?" David began to panic in a way that was quite obvious. It seemed he thought I didn't know. From the beginning of our marriage, David had given me handwritten salary statements. This was to hide the fact that he was skimming off part of his salary, which became his allowance. I asked your father once, "How much is David's salary?" He looked puzzled but told me. "So, I know about the money you've been taking. So, that means?" "Well." He seemed surprised, but he told me. "So, it's clear that you've been skimming money." As I told him this, David fell silent. There was a long silence, so long I thought the call had ended, then David suddenly raised his voice. "What's wrong with me using the money I earned? It's your fault for using up the money I gave you." Yes. "So? We're getting a divorce. I'll demand alimony. You'll have to pay back the money you've used." At this, I grinned. I had gotten him to say exactly what I needed. Now David couldn't escape responsibility. "Oh, thank you. I wanted a divorce too. Come over for the divorce discussions, please." "Eh? No, but, I mean, you want a divorce, right? I'm also preparing evidence of your affair, so I'll be waiting." Although I couldn't see his face, David's voice gave away what seemed like a pale expression. "Evidence of an affair? What are you talking about?" "No use pretending. I have photographic evidence." "Photographic evidence?" I could almost picture David reeling. Holding back my laughter, I continued. Then, I'll give you an address. Let's meet next Sunday to discuss the details. I unilaterally provided a certain address and immediately hung up. I've successfully pushed for a divorce. Now, if I can just make him apologize. Honestly, that was going to be the most challenging part. I braced myself for what was to come. On the promised Sunday, I was at the meeting place before the appointed time. He should be arriving soon. As I looked around, I noticed David in the corner of my vision. Over here. I waved and called out to him. David looked up and appeared startled. Eh? Here? This place? Yes, this is the address I gave you. But, this place. Whose mansion is this? David looked behind me. There stood a mansion worth about 100 million, far larger and more luxurious than an ordinary house, complete with a garden. It was a 3-story building with a basement and a home theater. A luxury car was parked in the attached garage. Pointing to the mansion, I smiled. This is my house. It's brand new, so it's pretty clean. Huh? Your house? Yes. I was planning to live here after the divorce, so I had it built recently. Indeed, the place I had called David was my newly built house. Naturally, David, who thought of me as just a housewife, was utterly shocked. Pushing him gently from behind, I led him into the house and guided him to the living room. Let's have our discussion then. This is my lawyer. I introduced my lawyer who was waiting inside. However, David was too distracted to focus. He kept looking around nervously and didn't even notice the photos of his affair laid out on the table. He didn't respond to me, and frankly, it wasn't much of a discussion. Eventually, David asked in a whisper, "How did you manage to buy a house like this?" Thinking about his focus, I answered, "I just bought it, you know." Stop lying. A housewife can't afford this. To afford a $100 million house, one would typically need an annual income of around 15 million. I do have that kind of income. So, I answered him calmly. I earn that much. Do you have a problem with that? No, but how did you do it? I kind of started helping a friend's company, and before I knew it, things turned out like this. The story goes back a few years. When my father was hospitalized and we had issues, I decided to divorce. That's when I began preparing for it and first started looking for a job. Without a job, I couldn't survive post-divorce. So I started looking for work that could support me independently. But finding a good job isn't easy. That's when I consulted my close friend, Susan. Why don't you help me with my work? Your work? What do you do? Land-based aquaculture. Land-based aquaculture involves creating artificial environments like pools for breeding. Although it has its drawbacks, it's also an eco-friendly method that prevents ocean pollution. Susan's father started it, and now she had taken over. So you started working there? David asked tentatively. After I started helping, the business suddenly began to do well. My main tasks were negotiations and administrative work. Susan said that I was a big help, and eventually, I was promoted to an executive position. It was all coincidental, but luck is part of capability, I believe. Hearing my story, David slumped in disappointment. Then, after a moment of thought, he suddenly looked up. All right. Let's forget about the divorce talk. How about we start over? I couldn't believe what he was saying. With a cold look, I responded. What? Save your sleep talk for when you're asleep. No, I'm serious. I want to start over with you. David began to plead fervently. But it was clear he was just dazzled by my money. I refuse to be with someone who cheats. And someone who neglects their father-in-law too. But, about my father. Quiet. You might not know, but I've been paying your father's hospital bills. The money David gave me was just a small amount. After paying for food, heating, and other expenses, there was never anything left over. That was all he gave me. Naturally, I couldn't afford his father's hospital bills. Initially, I managed somehow, but after I started working, I paid the bills with my salary. Despite that, you wouldn't listen to me and never visited your father. That's, well, I can't trust someone like that. As I raised my voice, David looked dejected. Then, my lawyer discussed alimony with him. David couldn't say anything and just nodded through the entire conversation. Eventually, prodded by the lawyer, David signed the divorce papers. The alimony was settled at $3 million. Now that the divorce is final, you'll have to pay for your father's hospital bills from now on. Yeah. David nodded reluctantly. It was a relief that he didn't argue. I let out a sigh of relief and sent David away, effectively kicking him out. It's finally over. My only regret was that I couldn't get an apology from David. But I still had one last move to make. If I played it right, David would have to apologize. The thought made me unwittingly smile. A few days later, on my way back from the company, I was called from behind. Hey, Emily. Don't call me so familiarly. We're divorced now. Shut up. What the hell did you do? David was looking at me with a red face. I realized then. Ah, that talk must have happened at the company. With a smile, I responded. What do you think I did? Stop messing around. Tell me what you did. How did you get me fired? David was stamping his feet in frustration. His agitation was amusing, and I couldn't help but smile. Is it your own doing? Getting caught having an affair with the company's office worker. David's affair was with an employee of his company. He seemed to have been doing as he pleased, being the president. After deciding to divorce, I reported this to my father-in-law. While he regretted the divorce, he was furious about David's actions. Showing him the photographic evidence of the affair, he grew even angrier. Then, he said to me, I'm thinking of transferring all the shares I hold in the company to you, Emily. To me? Wouldn't David's brother be a better choice? No, I want to give them to you. Use them to dethrone David from his presidency. The father-in-law's company was a corporation. For executive appointments, including the president, shareholder meetings resolutions are required. While the board of directors' resolutions can also decide, his company was not very large. Most of the company's shares were held by my father-in-law. This meant he could make decisions unilaterally as a shareholder. In smaller companies, it's common for the president to hold the majority of shares. Therefore, if I inherited all of his shares, I could exercise the decision-making power alone. However, it wasn't me who decided to dismiss David. Your brother was considerate. He's the one who decided. Him? Why did he do what you said? It's not about doing what I said. He decided for the company, considering its best interests. David collapsed on the spot as I spoke. Then he began to mutter apologies. I'm sorry, please forgive me. No, I won't. I'll be lost without a job. Please. I had no sympathy for him. It was all his own doing. I won't forgive you, even if you apologize. Please. I'm begging you. David prostrated himself on the ground. I turned away dismissively. Sorry, but there's nothing I can do for you. Why? If you have the shares, you can. I sold them to your brother and his wife. I don't want anything to do with you. At that moment, I heard David sobbing, but I pretended not to hear and walked away. After being dismissed as president, David had to leave the company. If he had been an employee or a working director, he might have been able to stay. David had joined the company riding on his father's coattails and continued to exhibit an arrogant attitude. Me, an employee? No way. He even said things like that. So, as soon as he was dismissed, he was ousted from the company. Now, he's reportedly working part-time at a convenience store, but given his age, reemployment might be difficult. He seems likely to spend his old age regretting his actions, without much money. As for me, after the divorce, I became more dedicated to my work. While I don't think about remarriage, there are a few men among my colleagues. Maybe spring will come again for me. While pondering these thoughts, I received a call from Tom. I'm bringing my girlfriend over next time. Really? I'm looking forward to it. Though my marriage was a failure, I hope Tom won't experience the same. But I'm sure he'll be fine. He's much more solid than I ever was.
It is best to stay away from that person.
At a pre-marriage meeting with both families, my grandmother suddenly spoke in a way I had never seen before. I felt the atmosphere freeze. With her mysterious ability, my grandmother pointed out to a man in front of her, and his face quickly turned pale.
This person has many dark spirits attached to him.
My grandmother certainly said that. This is a story about my grandmother and her mysterious ability. My name is Lana, and at that time, I was 33 years old and running a venture company. My family, which is my parents, younger brother, and grandmother, and our family was very close-knit. The only thing that set us apart from other families was my grandmother's mysterious ability. She could find lost items, predict sudden visitors, and even the day when relatives would pass away. The pinnacle of her ability was when my grandfather passed away. My grandmother quietly told our family, who were in tears,
"Don't cry too much. Grandpa is crying too."
She then said that Grandpa had hidden some money behind the closet and that he wanted us to use it. We were shocked when we peeked behind the closet and found an envelope, just like my grandmother had said. My grandmother hated dishonesty, was kind, and was good at cooking. Her favorite phrase was, "Don't do anything bad because God is always watching." I grew up under the care of this grandmother with a mysterious ability, and I graduated from junior college. After working at a regular company for a while, I started a small accessory company because I loved using my hands since I was young, and it eventually led to a successful online sales business. Our small, close-knit company only had a few employees, and we enjoyed working together. One day, I received a phone call.
"Hello? I am a futures trading specialist broker."
"Oh, I'm not interested in that kind of trading. Excuse me." As soon as the other person started talking, I tried to interrupt and hang up. Then the person said with a laugh,
Sorry. It's me, Lana. It's Chase. Remember? We met at the reunion."
Upon hearing that, I was taken aback. Chase was a classmate from high school. He was great at sports, top of his class, and very popular with girls. After graduating from famous university, he became an elite businessman, working for a famous foreign company. At the recent reunion, we were excited about his entrepreneurship, and we exchanged contact information, hoping to have a conversation as fellow venture capitalists. I remembered that and hurriedly apologized. "Chase? Oh, I'm sorry. You sounded so fishy, so."
Come on, not cool, Lana. We exchanged contact information for a reason. Anyway, more importantly, how about having a meal together? I want to talk about business.
On that promised day, we met up at the very stylish restaurant. There were couples all around, and I was a little intimidated to talk about business in that kind of atmosphere. Chase arrived a little late, beyond the scheduled time.
Lana, sorry for making you wait. So, how do you like this place?
Yeah, it's really nice, but being surrounded by only couples on a date. I answered honestly.
We should also look like a couple in love, right? And I always liked you.
I was surprised by the sudden turn of events. Really? I had no idea.
I thought so. You are a bit dense when it comes to that kind of stuff.
He opened the menu in front of me and smiled. I was overjoyed to hear that he liked me. He was my high school Prince Charming.
Since I come to this place often, can I order for us?
Yeah, of course. Thanks to him taking the lead, the meal became really enjoyable. When we were in the middle of our dishes, he brought up the main topic.
Well, the main topic is, do you have any interest in investing?
Investing is a field that I'm not good at. Even when it comes to company finances, I'm terrible with numbers and just leave everything to our accounting guy, Nathan. To be honest, I'm pretty bad at it.
Well, how about I support you and you try investing? And by the way, would you like to have dinner together again next time?
I got swept up in his skillful lead and couldn't help but agree. Yeah, let's have dinner together again next time. And so, I became close with him and we regularly had meals together. One day, Chase spoke with an unusually serious expression.
I love you from the bottom of my heart,
now and forever.
That's why I want us to date with the intention of getting married.
Chase shows up at our meeting place every time with stylish clothes and a bouquet of flowers. Our relationship is like a dream come true for me. I agreed to his proposal immediately. A few days after the proposal, he said to me in a formal tone,
Now that we are going to be a married couple, can you entrust me with managing our money? It could also be a good deal for your company, you know?
Are you talking about investing?
With $50,000, we could double the size of your company by next year. I'm confident.
Okay, I understand. But it's a lot of money, so can you give me some time to think about it? I need to discuss with my employees and family. Feeling overwhelmed by the large sum, I decided to seek advice from people around me.
Lana, do you trust me?
It's for our future. Chase spoke to me in a sweet voice, making I felt like a princess, and I had no reason to doubt him. The next day, he called me with a cheerful voice.
One of my subordinates just contacted me, and the situation has changed slightly since yesterday. If we could come up with another $30,000, our future would be guaranteed.
Wait, so that's a total of $80,000? That's a lot. I need more details about the investment before I can commit to it, even if I'm not well versed in investments. Chase seemed a little annoyed by my request for more information.
Are you saying that you don't trust me?
No, it's not that, but...
Then, $80,000. Investing is all about speed, you know?
Wait a minute. Of course, I trust you, but everything is happening too fast for me to keep up. Can we wait until after the meeting with both our families, the day after tomorrow, to talk about the money?
Okay, I understand. So, the money will be ready by the day after tomorrow then.
Although Chase seemed a little dissatisfied, he agreed to wait for the money. He kept insisting that the investment was guaranteed to be profitable. But I started to wonder if it was really that easy to make money. Even though I loved Chase, I had doubts about giving him $80,000 for investment, especially since I wasn't familiar with investment myself. I didn't know how to make a decision about this. Whenever I'm in a situation like this, I always contact my grandmother. When I called to tell her about my engagement, she was very happy. But at the same time, she sounded a little worried and said,
Is that person really okay? I see a lot of dark shadows around him.
Hearing my grandmother's voice made me suddenly realize that I might be doing something foolish because of Chase's sweet looks. Would a boyfriend really demand such a large sum of money out of the blue? Many questions started to rise in my head. I also mentioned to this Nathan, our accountant, who is very knowledgeable about investments, and he was surprised.
Even if you love that person, you should stop investing. The risk is too high. There are even scams like that.
When he mentioned the word scam, I couldn't help but shudder. It was because the words dark shadow my grandmother said and the word scam were linked in my mind. From that moment on, my love turned into suspicion and anger. I decided to investigate the truth of the matter and waited for the meeting between both families. On the day of the meeting, both families gathered at a luxury hotel in a neighboring town. After introducing our families, my grandmother solemnly spoke in a way I had never seen before.
You should stop seeing this person. The man right next to you is angry.
The atmosphere of the room became tense. My grandmother slowly pointed to Chase's shoulder and whispered. Chase was losing his words at the sight.
What are you talking about?
Then my grandmother continued.
Not only the man, but also the woman next to him is angry. I can see a lot of anger. And then, someone who wants to take you down will be here soon.
Chase's face turned pale, and he began to panic, trying to stop my grandmother's words.
Shut up! No, I mean, maybe she's just mistaken about something.
Then my grandmother turned to Chase's parents and said,
It seems that both of you are in dire need of money. First of all, does the male person over there have a current illness? You should go to the hospital immediately.
Then Chase's father's face darkened and he said,
Actually, since last year, I've been having stomach problems. God is watching, so go to the hospital before deceiving others.
Then my grandmother turned to the mother of Chase, who looked like she was about to burst into tears.
I can see that you've had a difficult life. But even if you hit the rock bottom, you shouldn't resort to deceiving people like this. Deep down, you really want to be of help of others, don't you?
Upon hearing this, the woman broke down in tears and said,
I'll continue working as a nurse. I promise.
At the moment, Chase, who had been watching the situation, suddenly became agitated.
What are you doing? Do your job properly. I thought you had to play my parents' role.
As I was surprised by his sudden outburst, the sound of the door opening loudly filled the room. One of my company's employees, Nathan, had entered.
We have done some investigating on you, sir. We found it suspicious when we heard about the investment offer from Lana.
Nathan then opened a file containing the result of his investigation.
Who are you? An outsider? What are you talking about?
Shocked by his loud voice, hotel staff rushed in.
Get out! all of you, who have nothing to do with this. Someone, remove this man from here.
My grandmother then spoke up saying,
See? I told you. Someone who is inconvenient for you shows up. What did you say, you old hag?
Witnessing his true nature, Nathan yelled,
Lana, don't be fooled by this man. This is a scam. What did you say? Don't say stupid things.
Still trying to defend himself, Nathan exposed Chase's wrongdoing by showing articles and copies of SNS posts he found on the internet about the fraudulent investment company. Then, my grandmother calmly mentioned the name of a certain bank.
You are keeping the money you took by deceit in the United Bank, right? The account number is...
My grandmother even went as far as to reveal the account number. Nathan raised the memo with the account number on it and breathed heavily.
I'm going to the police now. Come with me. Please, stop that. I'll apologize for everything.
Can you explain what's going on? I asked in a menacing voice, and Chase started confessing while still bowing down on the ground.
The investment was real at first. I had confidence in my investment because I had been working for a foreign company for a long time. And I thought if I could make money, I could face my wife, who looks down on me.
What? You had a wife?
I was stunned by his absurd story. My wife has only lived a wealthy and luxurious life because her family is rich. She's extremely extravagant with money, and I've always been looked down upon by her for being concerned about money. If this investment had gone well, I wouldn't have had to worry about what she said, and everything would have worked out.
Listening to Chase's selfish confession, I calmly continued. In other words, you were planning to steal my money and ran away. Is that right? And your parents are also fake. I wondered if they had taken on the role of his parents for the job. And the two of them immediately bowed down on the spot. Disgusted, I had nothing to say to these three and left the scene. Later, his story was featured on the front page of the newspaper. It was only natural for the police to get involved since he had caused so much trouble. It seems that the police had already begun the investigation when Nathan rushed to the police station with the evidence. Days later, I thanked Nathan for warning me again. Thank you for letting me know, Nathan. I was completely deceived. I thought I met a perfect guy, but it was all a lie. As I lamented, he spoke boldly to me. Lana, let's eat something delicious when you feel like this. Let's go get some food. He's serious and awkward, but he thinks of me more than anyone else. He is my now husband. Since that day, I thought I would never have a love affair again, but it was different with Nathan. I had a vague feeling that he really cared about me. Then one day, Nathan suddenly said to me,
Lana, can you introduce me to your grandmother? And if there is no problem with me, will you marry me?
I was surprised by this sudden proposal, but he didn't back down and insisted on meeting my grandmother. I had been cautious about love, but if my grandmother said it was a bad idea, I would quietly back off. So, I agreed to introduce him to my grandmother. And my grandmother said,
Oh, he is the one. He will be your husband.
What? I was taken aback. But my grandmother's words became decisive, and I decided to marry him. Now, I am happy. 3 years have passed since then, and my grandmother has turned 80. but she's still healthy, and her predictions are accurate. Our relationship as a couple is good, and our business are going well. My grandmother, who has a mysterious ability, gave me a wonderful prophecy the other day. A lovely family member will come to you. The day after my grandmother's prophecy, my husband and I rescued a lost cat. In the end, the owner was not found, and we named him Charlie, and he became a member of our family. He's a lively little boy who loves to play pranks and makes a lot of noise every day. Hey, wait! Charlie! I am chasing after Charlie with a smile on my face today.